My name is Suzanne Conley. I live here in Osterville. I am the co-founder along with Stacy Gunther of Save Greater Dowses Beach. We are coming up on our second anniversary. We were founded in August of 2022 when we first heard about Avangrid's plans for Dowses Beach. Since our founding, our mission has expanded really to oppose all landing of offshore wind cables on our recreational beaches and then traverse through our beautiful coastal village centers up to our protected lands, especially the watershed site up there on Chute Flying Hill Road and the Oak Street site, which is right on top of a wellhead protection zone. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge our merry little band. Many of them here. We'll start over there with Pete Hansen over there. He's one of our water commissioners as well. We have, who else here? Hector Gunther's here. I don't know where Hector went. Right there. Stacy Gunther, my co-founder. And who else is here from Robert Slater, Gary Peters. Where's Robert? I want him to wave. Hi, Robert. And then there's Gary Peters, Dr. Gary Peters and Ann Peters. And Brian Coble is here. And I think that's it. Bob Schulte will be here. He'll be late. Here comes Ann. I wanted to start with a little story from this past week. I brought my beautiful grandchildren to Dowses Beach, and we love to collect rocks. And my grandchildren love to paint rocks. And the little one, the 6-year-old, said, I have a way to save Dowses Beach. I said, what's that? Well, we paint the rocks gold. People will think that we'll bury them back under the sand. People will think there's gold at Dowses Beach and no one will dig it up because it's so special. And I said, I don't think that plan is going to work, honey, but there are gold rocks from Dowses Beach. But anyway, what we're going to do today is show some clips, not all of them. We just don't have time. The Close to the Wind Summit in January drew 350 people in the dead of winter on Cape Cod. That was quite a feat. We're going to show you just a few of the clips. We think the most critical ones, and then let you know about this YouTube site. Now, I'm a real novice when it comes to having a YouTube channel and putting things up on it. So forgive me if, it looks kind of funky, but you'll have the YouTube address. And at your own leisure, you can see all of the presentations that were there. The theme of the summit in January was this. There are groups out there who are fighting these ocean wind farms because they care so much about the impact on the offshore environment, but no one is listening to them. We are, but the government, the federal government and the state government are not. They are just saying, don't worry, everything's fine. No dead whales, no dead turtles, no dead seals, no destruction of our fisheries and so forth. Our group has been focused on the negative onshore impacts of these plans. We believe very strongly that the developers, in this case, Avangrid Renewables, coming in here and saying, we're going to put our renewable energy infrastructure here, and you've got nothing to say about it, is just the wrong way to do infrastructure, in my humble opinion. So that's really what our group has been doing for 2 years, fighting these cable landings on our recreational beaches, and we'll talk a little more about that. But we're going to begin today, if it's okay, with a presentation by a woman named Dr. Lisa Kwiatkowski-Knight. She's an MD and a PhD. She's from Harvard University. She has been one of the leaders of a group called Green Oceans, and she did a tremendous presentation talking about the impact of these projects on our ocean, our beautiful oceans. I like to think of that phrase, from sea to shining sea. The plan is to ring our coastlines, the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, and the West Coast, with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these turbines, many of them visible from shore. So we'll start with Dr. Kwiatkowski-Knight. I think I might have to back this up.
Thank you. Thank you for Suzanne for organizing and inviting me. Thank you, everyone. Also, as part of the organization of this conference, and for everyone being here. I'm actually very honored to be here talking to you. For someone who has felt silence in this debate for a long time, it is really nice to have an audience. So I also want to thank, before I begin, the members of Green Oceans. We have a board of trustees that have been unbelievably productive in the last year, an entire executive committee that has been tireless. But most of all, I want to thank my co-founder, Bill Thompson, who's here in the room. I want to thank him for his courage, his leadership, and his wisdom. I also want to emphasize, despite the rumors, especially in the Cape Cod Times recently, that we are not funded by the fossil fuel companies, nor do we have any connections with the Koch brothers. We are a completely non-partisan grassroots organization. We share a concern for our environment and for the climate, and we particularly share a love for the ocean. So our mission, Green Ocean's mission, is to protect the ocean and biodiversity because that ensures our own survival. A healthy ocean is one of our best defenses against climate change. Why? Well, the ocean, as many of you know, produces more oxygen for our planet than all of the rainforests in the world. It absorbs carbon dioxide and the excess heat we produce. Like the circulatory system in the body, the ocean is absolutely vital to the health of the planet. So, what are we doing by industrializing the ocean? Most of you might know, but there are plans off our shores to put over 1,000 wind turbines, each of them over 870 feet tall, only 12.9 miles from the coast. And these are driven by state mandates, not by science. So this is a map where these 1,000 turbines are going to go. It consists of 9 projects. These 9 projects will cover over 1,400 square miles of pristine ocean. That's more than the state of Rhode Island itself. These are going to be the largest turbines ever built, the greatest number in one location anywhere on Earth, and the largest marine construction project in the history of the world. Even China hasn't tried to do something like this. So those of you who might actually be for offshore wind might be thinking, well, more is actually better and bigger is better. This means that this country has finally gotten serious about climate change and we're finally doing something about it. But as the Washington Post actually published 7 years ago, bigger is not always better. The more renewables you have, the bigger the problem can be. And that problem is that they rely on natural gas. They rely on fossil fuels. So how big is big? Well, these are very big. 870 feet compared to the lighthouse off this Conic Point. The lighthouse is 70 feet tall. This is how it looks from shore, and this is how it looks compared to one of the typical turbines that are going to be off our shores. They're bigger than any building in all of Boston. They are going to be enormous. And why is big? Why does it matter? Well, it turns out that bigger turbines use bigger foundations. Those foundations have to be jackhammered, basically, or pile driven 300 feet into the ocean bed, into the seafloor, in order to stand up. Bigger also means that they're going to be more vulnerable to hurricanes, to strong winds, and they're going to be more likely to fail. So, what else goes with big? Big oil. Well, big oil is big wind. And one of the things that Nicholas Krakow, or whatever his name is actually, did not know is that Big oil is driving this. So the Danish oil and natural gas company is now Orsted. They've changed their name, but they haven't changed their spots. Stat Oil, the Norwegian oil company, is now Equinor. British Petroleum just bought the Beacon Hill lease, and Avangrid is the big Spanish energy giant. And finally, we have Shell Oil. So can we trust big oil now that they want to be big wind? Well, I would say, as a physician, they are not actually adhering to the Hippocratic Oath. We have a sick planet, and they are not adhering to the do no harm oath. They know they're going to be doing harm. What kind of harm and to what extent? Oddly enough, some people, even people who agree that we need offshore wind, would say that there are places in the ocean where it might not be appropriate. Well, one of those places is a place called Cox's Ledge. So this is a depth map of the ocean, and you can see from the turquoise that though there's an area that's a little bit lighter and a little more shallow. This area happens to be a foraging ground for 5 endangered whale species and one of the last remaining spawning grounds for southern New England cod. And yet, despite that, BOEM and our US government went ahead and approved the 2 projects that are going to cover the entire area of Cox's Ledge. So that circled area is the same area, and you can see it's now covered with where turbines are going to be placed and inter-array cables are going to be connecting. Why does this matter? Well, biodiversity does matter in terms of our health. The World Health Organization said that biodiversity is more important for human survival than climate change. NOAA was worried. They wrote 2 separate letters to BOEM saying these projects are going to pose population level risks to southern New England cod. And yet, BOEM went ahead and approved those projects anyway. And not only that, they approved it despite the fact that the company admitted that there's going to have an overall cumulative adverse, a major adverse impact of all commercial fishing and recreational fishing. So you might ask, why are the companies actually admitting these kinds of things? Well, it turns out that the impact statements are kind of like a confessional report. If the company confess to all of these adverse impacts, then when the government goes ahead and approves the project, it's not the company's fault. We told you it might have population level impacts on cod, but you approved it anyway, so it's not our fault and we can't be sued. Well, turns out there are some problems with marine mammals as well. Are they worried about all the marine mammals that like to forage during the winter on Cox's Ledge? Are they worried about all the marine mammals that migrate through all of the Atlantic continental shelf areas where all of the wind projects are planned from North Carolina up to Maine? Well, they probably are, and they probably should be, because 78 large whales have died in the past year during offshore wind construction and site survey work. Well, a lot of people would say, including the government and also the Conservation Law Fund, that there is absolutely no connection or any reason to be worried about these things. Even when a whale dies right in the middle of the South Fork Wind construction site, we can tell this because of the number on the foundation. So this is a pile-driven foundation, and this is a dead whale right in front of it. It's a humpback whale. Well, when the Conservation Law Fund actually comes out and says that there's absolutely no connection, and NOAA comes out and says there's no connection, you have to wonder why. In the Conservation Law Fund's instance, I actually give them a pass. Well, not complete pass, but I actually respect their work. I think they are smart people. I just don't think they've done their homework. They have not looked to see that on the NOAA site, you can download the incidental harassment authorization form. It turns out it's illegal to actually harm or harass whales, any marine mammal, unless you ask permission first. If you ask permission, you can actually harm and even kill a whale. Well, it turns out that the South Fork Wind Company, or actually Orsted, asked permission. They not only asked permission, but they specifically asked permission to harm humpback whales, the very type of whale that was dead in the South Fork area. Not only did they ask for the humpback whales, but they asked for more humpback whales and any other kind of whale. So they must have known that this particular whale was actually vulnerable. Level A harassment is the type of harassment that leads to permanent injury and even death. So why are they trying to tell us that there may not be any connection between the whale death and the construction site? The company asked for permission and the government gave them permission. Why would they ask and why would they be given permission if there was absolutely no connection between the two things? Well, I think the Conservation Law Fund had to close its eyes to this, and I'm not sure why. I think probably because they really truly believe that offshore wind is the answer to our climate problem, and therefore they don't want anybody like you or me to thwart them in any way. Well, they're going to have to close their eyes to a lot more, because just for the projects off the coast of Rhode Island and Massachusetts, they've given permission for over 13,000 whale harassments, 250,000 dolphin and porpoises, and 73,000 seals. That's a lot of marine mammal permissions to be asking for, and it's a lot to be giving too. So what about the birds? Well, it turns out that you don't have to ask for the same kind of permissions for birds, so we don't know exactly, but we do know that raptors and eagles are particularly vulnerable to these kinds of things because they're never expecting the turbine blades to be coming from above. We also know that there are at least 4 endangered species in Massachusetts and Rhode Island that are going to be flying through these areas. One in particular is a beloved bird called the piping plover. And here's a map of the actual migratory pathway. Well, some people say that birds, so there's a little, collateral damage here. Well, how do you feel about the fact that maybe that collateral damage is also for humans? So it turns out that offshore turbines disrupt radar. That means that the Coast Guard has admitted that they will have to abort search and rescue during bad weather. Well, how often do you have a situation where you need to be rescuing someone in good weather? It's usually bad weather. And so they've admitted that these turbine farms, 1,400 square miles of them, are going to be prohibited from doing search and rescue during bad weather in those farms. That means there's going to be an unavoidable or a loss of life that would otherwise have been avoidable. And that is in their statement when they talk about the offshore wind turbines. So that's a lot of bad news. Well, what else could the offshore developers be hiding from us? Well, it turns out quite a bit. So this is a picture of 2 different simulations. It turns out this is from the Orsted Revolution Wind Farm. They have 2 separate sets. One they submit to the government and the other they give to the public. And this is a blow up of the actual simulation. And I've blown it up not to show how bad the view is, but just to demonstrate that the top one, which is the private one that they submitted to the government, you can actually see turbines on the horizon. The public one that they actually let the public view, you can see no turbines. So no wonder people think, oh, what are people upset about? You're not going to be able to see them. But you will be able to see them from at least 40 miles away. What else has the company and the government actually kept from us? Well, they kept the emergency response plan to oil spills. It turns out there's a lot of diesel oil, lubricants, and other things in these turbines. They kept the safety management confidential. They kept the air emissions calculations and methodology confidential. the impact to historical resources, and finally, the economic effects of these wind farms. So this is in public property. The ocean, it does belong to the public, and US citizens are paying 70% of the construction costs. These companies, now that you know are fossil fuel companies, you know they're for-profit companies. So we're paying all this for for-profit companies, and they're not letting us see what the economic impacts are to our own states. But I have more bad news. One is the jet plowing for the cables. So it turns out to trench the cables, you have to liquefy the ocean bed 4 to 6 feet down to lay the cables. There are hundreds of miles of cables out there. This is going to create sediment plumes that not only will change spawning grounds and breeding grounds, it will suffocate the fish around them, and it will resuspend all of the toxic chemicals that have been in these areas for generations, if not centuries. So, and the government has never asked these companies to test in their any core samples along these routes for PFOAs, the forever chemicals, nor have they asked them to test for heavy metals or BPAs, pesticides, any of the things that we might not want to be resuspended in the ocean, because once they're resuspended in the ocean, they get absorbed into the food chain and they are bioaccumulated and bioconcentrated in the fish that we love to eat. So if they can't actually liquefy the ocean bed and bury them with the jet plows, they use mattresses to cover up the cables. These mattresses will also change the habitat. But what's more worrisome to me is the fact that, this is a slightly more elegant, is the fact that these are crisscrossed over 1,400 miles. These cables, especially the inter-array cables, heat up, they emit heat. So 2 feet away will be increased by 36 degrees. That's a lot. Down in Florida, a 1 to 2 degree change in temperature bleached out 90% of the coral. We don't have coral reefs, but we have a lot of important things in our ocean, including fish eggs, plankton, small crustaceans, and a 36-degree increase might actually change some things. The export cables don't give off as much heat, but they give off something called electromagnetic EMFs. So EMFs are very important for primitive species, especially things like squid, lobster, turtles. They use EMFs to migrate, and they also use EMFs to find food, avoid prey, and even to mate. So a study up in Scotland tried to see if it changed development in lobster in particular, and found that it actually caused eye malformations and tail malformations. And those tail malformations didn't allow the small lobster to swim properly. And so the scientists who ran the study predicted that these EMFs, the level of an export cable, will have population level impact on lobster. And we know now that population level is just another sort of euphemism for extinction. Then we have the substations, and maybe somebody else is talking about the substations, but one of the things that I wanted to mention about the substations is that we're going to have about 10 to 15 of them out there, maybe more. Each one sucks in 8 to 10 million gallons of ocean water a day, heats it up to 90 degrees, puts chlorine bleach in it, and then spews it back out. Everything that gets sucked in gets killed. Every plankton, every larva, every small little crustacean gets killed in this process. That's a lot of ocean water to be heating up and killing every single day. So how are these things actually getting accepted by the communities? One, I think that, people who already believe that this is going to be good for the climate are not bothering to read those environmental impact statements. The other thing is that there is government sanctioned bribery. Part of the lease process actually included asking the developers to put in a certain amount of money that they're going to actually give to communities to sort of soften or mitigate the impacts. So these community bribes have helped people accept the bad impact, but I don't know what $170 million is gonna do for my grandchildren when they don't have, when there's no fish left in New England. I mean, I know that's an exaggeration, but $170 million is a lot of money. It also shows that these are for-profit companies. They're not giving away $170 million unless it still makes financial sense. So what's happening? That it still makes financial sense even though they're giving $170 million away? Well, we might say, okay, you know, I can accept all these negative things if I knew it was actually going to help the planet. But it turns out that offshore wind is not so clean. If you just take into account the footprint of the manufacturing and installation, it's pretty devastating. We have steel and cement, all made in China, shipped over in diesel ships to Europe where it's manufactured, and then shipped to the US where we have to install it. We have all of the rare earth metals, the cobalt and the copper, which is mined, a lot of it is mined in Africa and in China under not so great conditions. We know these countries have human rights abuses, and then it all has to be shipped to Europe and then to the United States. So the footprint alone is not very carbon friendly. But then you add on top of the fact that it is an intermittent source of energy or electricity. And every sailor knows that sometimes the wind doesn't blow. When the wind doesn't blow, we still want to be able to have our laptops working. And so that is why the Washington Post actually had the article about the fact that the more you have on the grid, the worse it is, because the more you have to have as your backup source, and it's not really a backup source, you have to have 100% of the electricity has to be able to be immediately added to the grid when the wind stops. When the wind stops, for revolution wind, it's also going to be stopping for beacon wind. So it's not like one of the projects is going to be able to compensate for the other one. We have developed really efficient fossil fuel turbine generators. So, and I'm not advocating for these, but natural gas turbine generators, they're called cogen plants. They can generally operate at about a 70% efficiency. But when you actually have them on standby, and they have to go from a low level to a high level, cycling up and down, they go down to about a 35% efficiency, even less than that too sometimes. So you're going to be using more natural gas for less electricity. The other thing is most of the electricity that is generated by wind farms happens at night in the wintertime. Well, we use most of our electricity in the summer during the day, and we don't have batteries. We don't have the battery capability to store that electricity. And the interesting thing about batteries is we have not developed the technology that would allow us to store this and we will not have the battery power in our lifetime, and even for the next century. So I might be saying something very different about offshore wind if we had the battery backup. I don't really think so, but I might be. But we don't have the backup battery. So why are we doing this now instead of investing in the technology that would allow us to actually use offshore wind? We could be investing in the battery technology. That's why the more we put on the grid, the worse the problem is going to be. And that is borne out in real life studies. Why are carbon emissions up despite the fact that we have so many renewables? Well, it's not really that much of a mystery. It's because of this intermittency. And the government knows that. They even say that they anticipate that the proposed action, and this is in the Revolution Wind environmental impact statement, will have no measurable influence on climate change. The company itself, in their fact sheet, they never mention that it's going to have any effect on carbon dioxide. They never mentioned that it's going to wean us off fossil fuels. They never mentioned that it's gonna help climate change. The only thing they mentioned is that it's gonna help us meet our state mandates. Well, you might think, okay, well, that's just one project. But even collectively, the government admits that there's going to be no collective impact on global warming. So if we're not getting a benefit from global warming, we have these known harms, maybe it's going to help the economy. Maybe that's why we're doing it. Well, the government also admits that offshore wind is the most expensive form of electricity out there, more expensive than nuclear. And who gets hurt when electricity rates not just double, but maybe quadruple? It's going to be the people who can afford it the least. Will it help the economy overall? Well, we know when electricity rates go up, usually manufacturing leaves. So that means that manufacturing is going to leave New England, maybe go to the south, but also maybe go to China. China is building a new coal-fired power plant once a week. By the end of this year, they're going to have built more coal-powered plants in 1 year than the United States has in the entire country. So the government also says that it's going to have a major adverse impact on employment. Some jobs will benefit, true, but overall, it's going to be a major negative adverse impact, and it's going to have a major adverse impact on the economy overall. And I haven't even mentioned decommissioning. So that's a whole nother subject. And decommissioning is a problem because the government has decided in its wisdom to not force or not make the companies who are developing these put aside adequate funds to pay for decommissioning. We know that these companies, Shell Oil, all of these oil companies, they're not hanging on to these projects. They're building them, they're getting the tax breaks, then they're turning them into limited liability companies. That means they have no financial or legal liability once these things are in the ground and are starting to make electricity. That means a hurricane could come by in a year and destroy it, and we would have no money to pay for these. What's more is that what we have learned from the project in Oklahoma that was decommissioned is decommissioning costs are actually higher than installation costs, sometimes significantly. But even if that's not true, the installation costs are much higher than we originally expected. So South Fork Wind, it turns out that each turbine costs $150 million. If we have 1,000 turbines out there, that's $150 billion that we're spending on something that we don't even know is going to help and probably will do far more harm than good. And the cost is astronomical, not only to build, but to get rid of. And if you think this technology isn't really up to snuff right now, it's only going to last 20 years. And at that point, it's very much going to be obsolete. So who's going to pay $150 billion to get rid of this? I don't think the ratepayers are going to want to. So I have to say that, again, I speak to this as a doctor. We need to know the benefits as well as the harms. When we had the COVID pandemic, the entire global economy was paralyzed, and yet the FDA required that vaccine companies actually do placebo-controlled trials to prove that their product made a benefit, helped prevent COVID. They also made them identify all the side effects. Why are we giving these companies such a pass? Why is the government just letting this happen? And I would argue that the COVID pandemic was just as much of a crisis as this climate crisis. And I would say that during the time of a crisis, and I think everybody who's a sailor or who's done anything that's kind of stressful, it's during a crisis you want to actually follow the rules. That's not when you want to start cutting corners. So we need to adopt solutions that will work, not just ones that we want to work. I think everybody wants offshore wind to work, but we have no evidence that it will. And the other thing I would like to say is we cannot afford to make a mistake now. If we actually do believe that we have a narrow window to try to solve the climate crisis, we do not need to be doing something with such a heavy carbon footprint now, and one that we don't have any assurance is going to actually work. So Green Oceans has taken the government to task for this, and we filed a lawsuit last week asking the government to follow its own rules. If this is a time of crisis, we need them to do this right. And we want to leave you with the idea that if we join together, we actually can try to get our voices heard. I'm not sure exactly why it's been so hard to have people listen to us, but I think the more we work together, the more people will have to start to listen. And Margaret Mead has a famous quote that I love, which is never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever happens. And this is our slogan, keep it wild. And if anyone would like a yard sign, we can deliver them to you. Thank you.
How do I get back to my playlist? Oh, no. Cindy. Oh, yeah, right. I go back, she told me. There we go. So I want to leave plenty of time for discussion, conversation, questions and answers. I was going to show 3 clips. Is that okay? All right, good. I want to point this out. Like I said, I'm not very good about YouTube. I'm pretty new to, having a channel, but I put all of the clips up here. And this little card that we handed out to all of you, it has the address of the YouTube channel on it. It's SGDB at Sumac 8873. That was my maiden name. But I was a Mac once. But anyway, so we'll let you go to see the other clips about the effects on the ocean. The 2 that I'll really recommend to you. I'm going to try to go down here just a bit. Look at Jerry Lehman and George Stover. They are the principals for a group called the New England Fisheries Stewardship Association. They are fishermen. They're out there, and there's a film embedded in Jerry's presentation that brought tears to the eyes of people who attended the summit in January. It's about young fishermen on their boats saying, what we're catching is deformed. We are catching nothing like we used to. The fish aren't here. And they're talking about the construction that started happening for the small block island project that only has a handful of these turbines. The other one that I really want to recommend is right down here. Val Oliver and Amy DeCivio, they started the group Act for Whales. Act's the call sign for the airport over there on Nantucket, as you know. But it's called Act for Whales. And they've been filing lawsuit. They're trying to get theirs to the Supreme Court right now. They just announced, but that's a terrific presentation as well. And Megan Lapp and I can't remember if I managed to get Bonnie Brady's presentation up here, but Megan Lapp and Bonnie Brady testified before Congress, and some members of Congress are really starting to open their eyes and say, whoa, wait a minute, this is kind of crazy. So there are all kinds of presentations here, and I'll leave it up to you. I want to show you some remarks by a fellow who belongs to our group. His name is Adam Myrick. He spent 20 years working in the electrical industry, bringing projects to market. He knows a ton about this sort of thing. And then I'm going to end by showing you a very important one by our own Cliff Carroll, who will tell you what's going to happen in Barnstable when they start building substations, which is a really impactful one as well. So we'll just see Adam. His is just, I think, 14 minutes, and then we'll show you Cliff's.
Thanks very much. Gary? All right. My name is Adam Meyer. and I'm here on behalf of State Dowses. I'd like to begin today by stating our position that the spirit is also to a part of the market. Here, right here, what we stand for. Maybe I'll bring some sound from the drawing. Current oath of equity. Tomorrow, to bring power on. There's no guard my thought. For 100% volunteer and 100% contract.
It's up as high as it goes.
We offer to have our own body.
It's him. Maybe we'll hold off on that one. I'll show you Cliff's. Thank you, Gary, for reminding me what Cindy told me to do. We do want to talk with you about some things that have been going on here in Barnstable. Lately, you probably heard about them, read about them in the newspaper, and we want to get you up to speed on that stuff too.
My name is Flip Carroll.
There we go.
I was actually involved, I formed a
You
group.
can hear that, right?
Fight Cape Wind back in 2003, but we were the little guys, we did things like, do boat protests at Greenpeace. We had a protest out of the test tower. The folks from Nantucket, I live in West Barnstable on a hill. And last night I look out, I see 5 blinking lights over 30 miles away. That's those new turbines, so. That being said, I'm going to make this the fastest slideshow you've ever seen because I'm not gonna mess with
Suzanne,
very great.
they're all afraid of me.
Okay, what we have here is we have, Cape Cod has what's called a sole source aquifer. We basically have an underground ocean that supplies all our drinking water. Cape Cod Aquifer provides 100% of our drinking water. It doesn't have any town boundaries. And basically, there are 3 different aquifers that they call lenses that go to the Cape. But the main one that we're in here, you can see the locus right in the middle. This is where they're going to be putting the transformer platforms. And that is called the Sagamore lens, which goes all the way from the canal all the way down to Dennis Harwich town line. And I'll blow through these real quick, but again, just keep your eye on the middle of the map. This is a map, and this I got from Bohm. This wasn't even a public document. And what's going on here is very important to my talk. I'm only going to talk today about aquifer transformers and the onshore nightmare that the offshore wind is creating. What you have here is you have 3 different objects. On your right-hand side is kind of a teal square. That's the Park City Wind, which the EFSB just approved. The federal government pretty much drove it down our throat. We just discovered probably about 3 weeks before the EFSB approved this project that they told us for a while it's going to be about 60,000 gallons of oil in it. Then they told us it's going to be about 65. And then the EFSB hearing comes out about 3 days before that. They disclose there's going to be 125,000 gallons of transformer oil on that. And you'll see in a minute, this is in the well zone. In addition to that, there's 45,000 gallons of what's called SF6 gas. It's used to cool. EPA says that SF6 gas is one of the deadliest atmospheric poisoning gases known to the EPA. It is 23,500 times more damaging to the atmosphere than CO2. Once it's released, it stays in the atmosphere for 3,500 years. They're using that, they never talk about it. The middle yellow blue, that's Eversource, by the way. Everybody keeps talking about Ironbird. We gotta keep an eye on Eversource. They're kind of parked it up and they're all working behind the scene. This is going to be pretty much the doubling of the size of an existing transformer at Oak Street. They're taking it from about 25,000 gallons up to about 70,000 gallons. And as Adam said, they're increasing the voltage from 345 kilovolts to 115 kilovolts. The large blue object on the left here is one of what was one of their best kept secrets, and it's about to become one of their worst kept secrets. That's a 28-acre transformer substation site that they have under agreement with an option to purchase. They've never disclosed it publicly. They've been running through the BOEM, which is the federal side of the process now, for looks like about 2 years, without really coming into town discussing it. Anybody that's from here in the Cape area is familiar with the Kmart Plaza. That's about 26 acres. This site is 28 acres, and it's right where the fire tower is on the side of Mid Cape Highway, one of the highest points of land on the Cape. Just move on. All these red lines indicate well zones, well protection zones, aquifer protection zones. The black squares that I've drawn, they're approximate, but they're pretty accurate. So right, you have the Park City substation, 125,000 gallons. The middle one is going up to about 70,000 gallons that we're aware of. And then that big black one with the little dot signifies the fire tower. That's 28 acres. If you go to scale with that particular, looking at the ones they have disclosed, it's probably gonna be 150 to 200,000 gallons of oil on that. The best part of it is, if you look to the upper left-hand corner, you can see kind of a different green. That's called the Bridge Creek Conservation Area. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. Big problem that we have, transformers overheat, they ignite, they explode. Back in June in Sydney, Australia, there was a transformer substation that caught on fire. 60 firefighters reported to it. They were not allowed to go anywhere near the site. That fire burned for 3 days. The transformers at Oak Street again contain just short of 70,000 gallons over our sole source aquifer, 125,000 gallons over the Clay Hill transformer, and maybe 150,000 to 200,000 gallons that's going to be estimated at the fire tower. These are all, for anybody that's not familiar with it, they're all within about 1 mile. They're at the top of that aquifer at the highest point. Now I'm really gonna fly through these slides. This is the transformer. This is another transformer. This isn't even the Australian one. Just for an idea and cleanup, and I'm just putting this in as a note. This is an oil tank that I took out of a piece of property a couple of years ago. This is the Barnstable Post Office down Route 6A in Barnstable Village. In the middle of buying that property, what it turned out is there was a gas station there in 1915. It was torn down, and then this building got built. Nobody remembered the gas station. So when we did the underground radar on it, I found what looked like a submarine on the radar at the front door of the post office. That little cleanup that you see right there turned into a 9-month cleanup at almost $250,000 just for that little spot. This is the floor plan, or basically the plan for the transformer substation. It's going to be located at the Knights Inn Motel on the edge of Woonquacket Lake, in the middle of one of those aquifer protection and well zones I showed you. These pieces of machinery right here, what contains 125,000 gallons of oil in the SF6 gas. This is an aerial drone shot. That hotel that you see in the bottom of the picture, that's only half of the site. They're purchasing that hotel. They're turning that into a 10-acre transformer substation. It's going to go all the way down to the wires that you see down below there. Again, right dead center in an aquifer protection zone on the edge of Woonquacket Lake. This is the Oak Street substation. They're in the middle of doubling to tripling it. Again, one of the highest points of land in between the two substation sites. You can see the Centerville water tower there that supplies most of the water in Woonquacket Lake in the distance. This is the Clay Hill fire tower that a lot of you see when you drive up the Mid Cape Highway coming from Burger King. All that land in the back, 28 acres. Again, this site is larger than the Kmart Plaza, the whole plaza. Estimated between 100 and 200,000 gallons. Now, what's important about this is up to your left-hand side again. The town of Barnstable did a study about 2 years ago. This is a document from the West Barnstable Water Commissioners. Let me make this very quick. This is really important. They had to do a study because back in 2019, the town of Pyanus, the village of Pyanus, was running 1.87 million gallons per day short on their well water. They had to shut wells off because of the fire school and the contaminant for PFAS. And they estimated in the same report that by 2040, if the town doesn't find new sources of water, They're going to be 3.23 million gallons per day short on supplying water. If I go to the bottom of this where it's bolded, they went through 9 different sites, 7 different sites, 9 different wells. The conclusion was sites were evaluated and ranked based on pump yield, water quality. The Bridge Street Conservation Area, which was that spot up on the left, which is only a half a mile from this 28-acre substation, was 10 times greater than any other site on the yield. This is the substation here that we were talking about off of the backside of Martha's Vineyard. This substation is 590 feet tall, contains almost 157,000 gallons of oil. Federal government requires that the developer do an oil spill fatality check. It's a federal regulation. This is the cover. It's 179 pages. They made them map what direction the oil is going to go in, and depending on what time of the year and the wind direction. Then the next thing they did, probability that the oil is going to reach land masses. As you can see here, the green line that runs along the edge of the cave surrounds Martha's Vineyard, surrounds Nantucket. That's the probability and the spots that will get hit in that particular time of year. And it also goes all the way down to Block Island. A quick quiz, and I'll answer it so I don't get shot. Who is protecting our sole source aquifer, public water supply, from the risks presented by the hundreds of thousands of gallons of wind farm transformer oil? The answer is not the EPA. The EPA is refusing to do water studies. They're refusing to enforce the Clean Waters Act. They're refusing to do the Sole Source Aquifer Act, and they're claiming that this project, because the project is not receiving federal funding. Oh, they're not doing it. They require the oil spill mapping. On the federal side, they do not require coverage on the state side. Massachusetts DEP, they also have refused to enforce protection of sole source aquifer. In fact, Avangrid's Vice President of Development is the former commissioner of Massachusetts DEP. Not Cape Cod Commission, they also refused the call to map out the well fields or evaluate the contamination, so they're not protecting us. Not the Cape Cod delegation, with the exception of the incredible efforts of State Rep. Steve Zaros. Every other rep, to my knowledge, is supporting this project. There were letters written in to the EFSB, and what ended up happening, this is the last slide. None of the Cape Cod delegation of state reps or senators have responded to calls to request that the EPA, the DEP mapping of the growing risks of these transformers present to the aquifer. They supported the Energy Facility Siting Board, overriding the town of Barnstable's objections on bonding to protect ourselves, which now there's no federal bonding on decommissioning. Now we have no bonding as a town. Zoning, building a transformer in residential zone, and the request for intervenor status, so that they basically reduced the town of Barnstable to the power of one individual. As Peter Hansen, who's his 18th year as water commissioner for Com District, constantly asks, where is the outrage? And last slide. We only have one sole source aquifer. It is not renewable. Thank you for listening.
So, I think if it's okay, I'd like to just. What? Oh, oh no. What did I do?
So the only thing the shooter was set up.
Turn what? Turn it off? That'll stop the recording. Cindy told me not to turn it off. All right, you guys handle that. Can you turn the volume down anyway? Turn the volume down.
Where is, when you have an open driveway, you are extremely vulnerable. I've done it.
Yeah, just right there. There we go. There we go. Okay, yay. So I just want to say a couple things. We're going to talk about the fun thing here. On Saturday, October 20th, the Village of Osterville is having their parade. They don't like doing it on the 4th where everybody else does. So it's this Saturday. Did I say what? My life is so a little confusing lately, but, so this Saturday, July 20th, Osterville Village is having our parade. And we want all of you to consider marching with us in the parade, holding up Dowses Beach signs. We have some Dowses Beach signs here that I want a few of you who have the front lawns to put them on. If you don't have a Dowses Beach sign, I'd like you to take them. But on Saturday, we'll bring plenty of them without the wire frames. So you can just march in our parade and support us. What? At 1 o'clock. At 12:30. So the church parking lot, right off of Liano there, the one, if you're going down toward the beach, it's the one on the right is where the parade stages. We'd really love to have a crowd of people walking with us. And what we experienced last year when we held up those Save Dowses Beach signs was a huge round of applause as we went through the village, okay? So please consider coming with us and then take those signs. Don't you worry, I have yours in my garage. So Tom, Tom's the guy on the corner there of Osterville, West Barnstable and Bumps River, who has signs all along his property. So he's our sign guy. But anyway, and Maria has offered to put signs up too. So thank you. What I want to say here, and it's for those of you who don't know, there are 3 projects. This company, I call it, in my opinion, they are so predatory. They came here, the town invited them here. We want Cobbles Beach. We'll put 2 cables underneath. We'll run it to a substation and we'll give you $16 million. And the town was happy. And quite frankly, nobody knew about this. We didn't realize that they're not talking about cables like the 2 cables that go to Nantucket, which carry each 35 megawatts of electricity. You saw a picture of these cables. Each one of those cables carries 400 megawatts of electricity. It's what the industry calls extra high voltage, and they've already put 2 of them under Cobbles Beach. At Cobbles Beach, there are 2 what they call splicing vaults in the parking lot. Splicing vaults explode and catch fire. They do. It's not, done, it's not an absolute. They're not going to absolutely do this. But the reason they catch fire and explode is because of moisture. Well, Cobbles Beach, Craigville Beach, and Dowses Beach are underwater 4 to 5 times a year. All right, so that's really the best place to put extra high voltage electrical infrastructure, right? They then built a substation adjacent to the only income restricted housing development in Barnstable, in Hyannis, right next to. They put their substation right next to it, where little children play, lots of little children, okay? Why would you put a substation there? How did that happen? We didn't even know about it. And of course, they worked with the sewering project and they ran their massive duct bank, 800 megawatt duct bank through the streets of Barnstable, and they messed everything up and the town had to do it all over again. Well, now with the Craigville project is here. Okay, it's been approved. Craigville, like Dowses, is protected by a constitutional amendment, a Massachusetts constitutional amendment, Article 97. This article preserves public lands that are used for recreation and conservation. And the amendment says you can't use that land for purposes other than that for which it was acquired. Barnstable bought Dowses Beach in 1946. Is it $36,000? Because in 1944, the entire area where Dowses is now, the beautiful mansion that was there was completely wiped out by a hurricane. And 2 years later, the Dowse family sold it to the town for the purpose of a bathing beach. And that's what the town meeting, it was then town meeting, voted on. We're buying this for a bathing beach. That's why it's protected by Article 97. Craigville Beach is also protected by Article 97. Once these cables land, they want to put 2 at Craigville, they want to put 3 at Dowses for 1,200 megawatts. They want to dig up the causeway, run the cables left on East Bay, right on Wiano, right through our beautiful retail village center, through our residential neighborhoods, and then to that 28-acre substation up on Oak Street that Cliff talked about. And at Craigville, they want to do the same thing, run an 800 megawatt duct bank right through that gorgeous historic Centerville Village Center, okay? Now, the town council has already asked the legislature, as you have to, for permission to give away the protections under Article 97. Last fall, the town told our group, we activists have been there constantly. They told the town manager to stop talking with Avangrid and to withhold the easements. In other words, the legislature gave the town permission to grant those easements, but because Avangrid had defaulted on what are called power purchase agreements and had done said other things, done other things that made us give pause as a community, the town council voted to, like, no more talking with them, don't sign those easements. We have to rethink this. Well, all this time, we thought that was still in effect. The town council had gone into executive session, and by a vote of the second vote, I'll talk about the second vote, by a vote of 5-7, agreed to sign these easements to give Craigville Beach away. And this happened about 3 weeks ago. I have never been so emotional talking to the town council, and I told them, you've just delivered a gut punch to the vast majority of the citizens of Barnstable by doing this. In executive session, secretly, we didn't know about it, and you tell us about it 14 days later. I want to shout out John Crow, our local councilor, was one of the 5 who voted to not do this. So thank you, John. Thank you, Felicia Penn. Thanks. Thank you, Craig, Tamish, Betty Ludke, and Chris Turks. How could I forget Kristen? So those 5 tried to hold the line, and they were overwhelmed by 7 who decided that, no, Craigville's worth 16 million. All right. I think there is absolutely no way that these developers should be turning our beautiful recreational beaches into sites for this heavy duty electricity infrastructure. It's just not right. It's dangerous. It's terrible. I don't want to bring my grandchildren, I hope my great grandchildren someday, to beaches where that kind of electricity is under the sand. And I will tell you, there's so much to tell you, but we're going to open it up for questions and answers. We really need to get more signs out there. So if you have a lawn without a sign, please make sure you take one of those. But comments, questions, we want to hear from our friends. Yes, Tom.
I think it's a good idea to mention that, climate survey to everybody.
Mhm.
And really give a large response.
Hi, Bruce. So a lot of folks in town, not me, but a lot of folks in town got a postcard recently from a researcher who's made a sort of a specialty of talking about public opposition to wind farms. And he sent a postcard out. He got approved for this research project. My husband got one. I didn't, naturally. And it says, what's your feeling about all these projects in Barnstable? So I filled out my husband's, and we shared the link with everybody, so don't screw up his results. But we found out today, Heather, was it you? Someone uncovered this, that Yukon has had these massive grants coming from the ocean wind companies. So that's, that they're funding all this stuff. It's just one of the things we've discovered. So thanks for bringing it up. If you get a postcard, yeah, it says they're not, but yeah, right. I lost my train of thought, but anyway, I'm suspect of all this. One of the things we've discovered is that there's almost a total media blackout on opposition. Every time Avangrid makes some like, oh, the town council of Barnstable agreed to give us these Article 97 easements, they call up radio stations, television stations, they write to newspapers, and it's all printed and reported on. We tell them something that we've done, silence. And I've just talked, something you guys should know. On the Outer Cape, those wonderful towns, Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro. Well, guess what just happened to them? They just found out that from now on, when they go to the beach, they're going to be looking at 1,000 turbines visible from shore. And they're all upset. You know, we tried to get everyone on the Cape interested in our fight. I'm not blaming them. But at first, nobody cared about little Dowses Beach and we were called NIMBYists. And the same thing at Craigville, when the folks in Centerville started saying, no, wait, we don't want this to happen to our gorgeous, they're gonna cut all those trees down in Centerville. Those trees are all dead because they have to put this massive duck bank under the roadway and those roots get cut and those trees come down. All right, so that gorgeous, beautiful historic center will be no longer. And they don't care. And no one outside of Barnstable cared until now. Now we're getting some interest Cape-wide because all of these new leases off the outer Cape are going to completely destroy the viewscape out there. And I have heard through the grapevine that they're planning the same kind of under the beach infrastructure all over the outer Cape. I said at a press conference the other day that this state administration is trying to turn Cape Cod into a giant electrical outlet for the rest of New England to plug into. And it's ruining the Cape. I had a comment on Facebook where someone said, the Cape is being murdered. All right, that's how we feel. We won't apologize for that. We think these wind farm projects, well, I'm of the personal opinion that the ocean will be destroyed too. As a group, we've stuck to fighting the onshore impacts. I should say that. Yes.
First of all, thank you for what you've done over the last couple of years. It's fantastic. Thank you. I complete my own ignorance. I've never been a fan of the offshore wind. But if you don't mind, what kind of progress, what kind of victories have you achieved in these 2 years? And what is it that we need to do going forward? We talked about legislators, you know, not having our interests at heart. Yet these clowns are reelected election after election. So how's the strategy change going forward to achieve some results? Putting placards at the Osterville parade is, it's nice, but it's.
No, I think it just, we do a lot of stuff about raising awareness and, you know, full disclosure. I don't hide this. I want to be one of those clowns. So I have decided to run for office because I really want to bring my voice to Beacon Hill in a loud, loud way. And as someone on the outside and someone that can't stand up there, I don't know anyone anything. I don't have to do what I'm told. And I'm here. You know, we turned to our senator who represents the Cape and the Islands, and we begged him for his help. We begged him. And we got zero. The senator who represents Cape and the Islands is Julian Sear right now. He's up for re-election and he's running against a fellow from Barnstable named Chris Lozon. And unfortunately, this fight seems to be breaking down along party lines, and I hate that because Save Greater Dowses Beach from the very start has been nonpartisan. We have Democrats, we have independents, we have Republicans in our group, and we all just hate this whole thing. You know, this is crazy. Why is this being done this way? So, you know, I'm trying to keep the two things separate, but I also don't want to hide it from anyone. So, you might hear my name in another context. Anyway, but, now in terms of what are we doing? What happened with town council, I can't even tell you how hurtful it felt. Many of us have felt so betrayed. We just felt betrayed and lied to, quite frankly. Save Greater Dowses Beach put out an appeal, 2 appeals for donations. We take donations. It's on that little card that you guys have. And people have really stepped up. We've contacted our law firm we work with, Senny Law over there in Brewster, about preparing a petition for a preliminary injunction against the agreement the town made with Avangrid, okay? And if that works, what we want, at first we talked to the town and we tried to get them to redo the vote in public. We told them, we feel you have violated the town charter because any measure taken by the town should trigger a 10-day window for the people of Barnstable to mount an attempt to pursue what's called the referendum process. And that would have been hard. We would have had to collect about 5% of the names of the registered voters, about 1,900, Hector, I think. 2,000, close to 2,000 names. And I had all these ideas about, oh, you get 10 days to do this, we'll get it done. We were flatly turned down by the town's attorney. And said, no, we didn't violate the charter. But we think you did. No, you didn't. We didn't. So we were shut down there. So we turned to get some legal assistance, and hopefully we'll be able to get a judge in Superior Court to say yes. The people were not bamboozled. Yeah. We strongly believe the charter gives us the right to the referendum process, and we were denied that. The vote was taken 14 days before they announced it suddenly. We were in shock. We were just sitting there because they had changed their agenda at the last minute. And we were in shock. But I do want to say that 2 days prior to that, we had the most amazing session. The Department of Environmental Protection of the state of Massachusetts sent something to a friend of our cause and said, listen, the group with the power here is your local Board of Health. And this came right out of the DEP, the state's DEP. Oh, so we scrambled big time. And on the most beautiful beach day of the summer, we filled the Crocker hearing room to standing room only. Unfortunately, I was the only one allowed to talk. They put us on the agenda and we presented them with a petition asking the town's Board of Health to do a top to bottom review of the cumulative health and safety impacts of all three of these projects. And they were, I would say, somewhat receptive. And they told us to come back and tell them which ordinances exactly we wanted them to enforce, which confused me because I thought they were supposed to enforce all the ordinances on the books, but we're going to do it. And we have some really smart people working on a presentation that I'll be able to deliver hopefully on Tuesday at their next meeting. And that's one thing I want to say. You know, I'm pretty new to Barnstable. I'm a Washer Shore. I have found the best friends in my life here on Cape Cod. The folks who grew up here are just fantastic people. But one thing that Barnstable is full of is highly educated, super intelligent, very dedicated human beings with the time and the energy to fight this kind of thing. So we've really been leveraging that over the last 2 years. And I really have to shout out, especially to Stacy. Stacy's been just working so hard on all of this. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. It's Susie McLean, the famous artist. Yeah, she's driving me in the parade, but not at Dowses Beach or something.
Suzanne is such a badass. We got everybody exercise on, Stacy and and, she has single-handedly started this is a page. She's done so much. If it wasn't for her, we would know. And I have to say, the town council, how many years ago? That was.
Oh,
To let them in, to let Amber in.
yeah, 22, yeah.
But with all the work Dan's done. We've got John Hill, Kristen Jerkison.
Yeah.
So now it was
Craig Tamish, Felicia Penn.
That's it.
Yeah.
It was sad, but the kids and.
Mhm.
But we didn't. So. she deserves it.
Hector, did you want to, I want to introduce Hector Gunther. He's one of these super smart people I got to know so well in this fight. Go ahead, Hector.
Yeah, so, gentlemen, the great chair, you asked a great question, about what are we doing? So a couple of other things. Suzanne mentioned the Board of Health. That meeting is next Tuesday. I think it's June 23rd, 3 p.m. in the town council hearing room. So if some or all of you can come and back us up as we ask the Board of Health to do what the EPA won't do, what the state DEP won't do, which is look at the cumulative health impacts. So July 23rd, Craig Crocker hearing room, town hall, be there or be square. Another thing that we're doing is Barnstable Speaks. We've locked arms with them. That's the group in Centerville that's on the front lines of the Fighting Park City Wind Project. They have filed an open meeting law violation with the town. And if you look at the upcoming agenda for this Thursday, there's a reference to the town's need, the town council is asking the town attorney to respond to this open meeting law violation. And the way the process works is if Barnstable Speaks and the people who filed this aren't happy with the response or don't like it, then they can forward it directly to the state attorney general. Now, she is part of the Healy administration, so we're gonna have to ride herd on them just to make sure we get a fair hearing. But again, the complaint is the way the town managed these votes to give away the easements for Park City Wind. We think it was done erroneously, if not illegally. So those are some things we're doing. I would also say, money, financial support. We are starting to engage our law firm to file litigation in Superior Court. This is our first lawsuit. We have, I think, $16,000 or $17,000 in the bank at $500 an hour with a decent lawyer. You know how long the 16,000 will last? 32 hours, right?
19 now.
Yeah,
19.
19. Wow. Anyway, we need, so if you feel it's in your heart and you can write a check and mail it to the post office box, I think it's on the placard that we've given out. That would be very, very helpful. So I'll stop there.
What time is the meeting Tuesday?
The meeting, question is Board of Health meeting Tuesday, the 23rd, 3 p.m. Craig Crocker hearing room at Town Hall. Please be there.
And also the town council is.
Yeah, and Town Council is meeting this coming Thursday at 6 p.m. in the same room. And some number of us will be speaking during public comment to continue our outrage over this recent vote to give away the easements at Craigville Beach. So
I want to talk about one more meeting, 1 second, and then we'll get your question. One more meeting, Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. Bone is going to be in Eastham, telling all the people on the Outer Cape how wonderful these projects are. So I put on my Facebook page, our Facebook page, our Facebook page, I posted that meeting. Kenny just reminded me to let everybody know, if you're not doing anything Wednesday, let's swarm Eastham and tell them what we feel, how we feel about their plans. We go to meetings constantly about this. So the Facebook page, I know a lot of you don't Facebook, but just try, because our Facebook site keeps you up to date on a daily basis about what's going on with these projects. I think, what's that? It's right on that little placard. Did you get the placard down at the bottom? Did you get one, ma'am? All right. We're gonna have Dr. Peters wants to say a few words, and then we'll get to your question, all right? Yeah. The Eastham meeting,
4 points.
what is it?
4 points hotel.
4 Points Hotel in Eastham. So if you want to go down there and let your feelings be known, please feel free. Dr. Peters wanted to say a word.
For those of you who may be new to this fight, this is a lot of information.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify something about the three projects, Covell, Crayfield, Dowses, and actually shed a little bit of positive light on this. Covell and Crayfield, the previous town council prior to the November election, I believe unwittingly, unknowingly, surrendered their rights under Article 97 with these host community agreements. The good news is Avangrid does not have a host community agreement for Dowses. And we are quite confident that they're not going to get one, because with the new town council that we worked so hard to get elected in November, we are confident that this will not happen. Under the state constitution, two-thirds of the town council would need to vote to give up their Article 97 rights. And we are quite confident that we have the numbers that we need to beat that. So in other words, we need to stay alert. We need to stay on top of what's going on with Dowses, as well as what's still being worked on with the Crayville situation.
This lady had a question.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I just want to. It's awesome.
And we are beyond grateful, the Lake Woquacket, Protection Association, right?
Yep.
Yes, and protective. And the reason that's so important is the substation that would serve the Craigville Beach landings is right above their neighborhood. And it's right on top of what's called a watershed replenishment zone. So they're gonna cover that replenishment zone with concrete. If there is an accident, they keep saying we're putting all this in a bathtub, an impermeable barrier. But if there's a fire or an explosion, that system will fail. And we had an expert in this area testify before EFSB that their system would fail in the event of a catastrophic fire or explosion. What happens to all that dielectric fluid goes right into Lake Woquacket, all right? And it destroys our aquifer at the same time. So, you know, this is the stuff we've been fighting for, and to have the EPA tell us over and over, we can't get involved because there are no federal dollars. That's such BS. This is being funded by the American taxpayer. There's no way these people could afford to do this without the American taxpayer paying for this, but the EPA is refusing to get involved. So that's why the tip from the DEP to go to your local Board of Health was such a great one, and we're going to advance that vector as well. Somebody else, yes, sir.
Beach and I don't have people.
The beach at the end of Wiano. Oh, yeah, at the end of the street. No, it's not. And they have actually talked about one of their options is to go right up Wiano via that small beach. That ruins Wiano. And you'll be all of the homes. I know. Believe me, all of us have children and grandchildren and
We talk about saving the beach.
Yeah.
We're not talking about saving people. And that's what we said. That's not. Save Dowses Beach. We have to say, save our.
save our communities. Yeah, right.
My husband has talked to people and they go, well, what do you mean save down the beach? But the ticket problem, all these electric fuels that are coming out, and like the report that is being handed out today, we won't know that for years. We
Yeah, and-
have children with cancer or whatever, and we won't know that till it's too late.
We think, they told us that the EMFs from all these cables, and they were talking at the time about the Vineyard Wind project over at Clovel's, are virtually undetectable. Well, we've had, myself included, we've had people go over there with EMF detectors. You can buy them online for about $50. And we're detecting pretty elevated levels of EMFs from two cables that have been energized by, 6 to 10 of these things, when there are going to be 62 of them running the energy under Covels. So we know they're full of it and they lie to us.
Listen, I think the
Yeah.
whole conversation has to be turned to protecting the people.
Okay,
Even about the beach. The beach is nice, but we have to protect the people lives in the future.
maybe we need to rename our group. I don't know, but yeah.
It's not the one that are allowed, these people, all these neighborhoods.
Yeah, all these neighborhoods.
Yes, all these people, the people that belong to low income housing, that's next, no one's talking about.
No, it's not a healthy situation at all to have this much electricity. You have 20 miles. If they get their way, there would be 20 miles of extra high voltage duct bank running through the streets of Barnstable. in front of your neighborhood, in your neighborhoods, in front of your homes. Most of us don't buy homes next to high voltage, but you all will be, many of you will be living with high voltage.
You may have to put a sign in front of your danger, I will.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's really gonna do great, thanks to your property tax. Does the governor have the last word on all of this?
The governor is, pushing this, pushing this, pushing this. This is her pet project. I call it AOC's science project that turned into the Green New Deal, that turned into the Inflation Reduction Act. And Laura Healy's profile is really, she's turned to national politics and she's been promoting this along with the Biden administration. They think this is the way to save the planet and they're destroying Cape Cod to do it, in our opinion. Yes, ma'am.
Knowing that it's part of the. Graveyard.
Yeah.
It's not feasible to have those many small children out there with all those ships coming in. How are they gonna?
You know, I have to tell you, there's a lot of ship traffic in what's, off of Cox's Ledge. It's called the North Atlantic Gyre. But this would increase the ship traffic exponentially. It's hard to describe how terrible this is going to be for our ocean. I want you to watch the videos, learn more about the impact on the ocean. It's horrifying. The New England fisheries people are convinced that this is going to destroy their ability to get wild catch on our tables. It's going to, they feel that the North Atlantic cod will be wiped out. We won't have any more cod on Cape Cod. It's pretty sickening. I had one lady up there and then Stacy. Go ahead. Yes, yes.
Speak up, please.
I used to come as a child, and, you always hear on radios, and there was something that's up with this on the opposite that you have this backyard in town, until it comes to you in your backyard.
Right.
Well, I'm here, and I call somebody else, but I'm noticing what's going on. I noticed those big power lines.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what was going on.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
But this is no new thing. The Cape is rights to Boston a lot of this. And the alcohol came out to us.
Yeah, I know.
All the years. Because that's the reason something very.
Yeah.
So it seems mighty as we are, we're a smaller force to fight the bigger Boston City. My question is, who's gonna benefit from all this electricity? Is it?
It's not Cape Cod. It's not Cape Cod. It's the urban centers of New England and Connecticut. Yeah.
So Connecticut's gonna benefit from all of it.
Yes. Yes.
And Rhode Island.
And Rhode Island and the urban centers, Worcester, Boston, and Springfield will benefit from the electricity. It's all part of what is called the New England grid. But the New England grid just says, yeah, you can do this. They don't say whether it's a good idea or not. We don't think it's a good idea. We're gonna go down, to the bitter end fighting it. But Stacy wanted to say something.
One more thing, sorry. I'm thinking we need a lot more people, we need a lot more support. Have you been on the radio when you were, it's on the radio all the time.
I'm on the radio way too much, if you ask me. Our best friend is Ed Lambert. He really is. Yeah, yeah. Stacy, did you want to?
Couple things on the handout, this goes for all obligations with writing down.
Oh, thank you, Stacy.
Also, this is a perspective. We are not focused on the turbine, we can focus on the onshore, right? Keep this in mind, something out in there. This kills people, residential. When I asked them if they have to come to, no. Case in point, community energy is as targeted a military residence in Virginia.
Yeah,
It's not getting It's still getting feedback, but not usually as much. So, you know, this is, a lot of this is about this, years ago. We talked to them, who are dealing with it, and they're just going about it. So listen. So just, you know, when you write to the team, just keep in mind that there's just many facets to it. Obviously, claims they want to be our partner. Well, everything they do and say is really country. And everything they, you know, they'll say recently is, you'll hear in the news, you hear on the radio, oh, New England wanted to do a better food. They make it seem like the country of that, and it's without, when it's not. So just keep an eye on the change for the name. So it makes it more, it's all, not, I believe, the mindset which is on opposite. So I just want to put that out.
Technological response. You have a last one?
Please read this letter.
Yes, that lady, I'm sorry, your name, please? Tony? No, the lady who handed out the EMF information.
Oh, I was just making it out.
I'll take it. It's terrific, by the way. Thank you so much.
Everybody should read that, because that really is what we should be talking about.
And take more of these and give it to your neighbors, like, that's poultry, the danger.
And just one department you know. Just, Rick, I'll get to you in 1 second. Just one more comment to follow up Stacy's comment about Avangrid. This company does have alternatives, but they have zeroed in on Barnstable. And why? Because the camel got its nose under the tent with the Cobalt project. And then they looked a little bit to the east, I guess it is. Oh, Breakville, that looks like a great beach to land. And then to Dowses. So a couple of things about this company, and I've said this before in these meetings, but this company's core business is regulated electric and gas utilities. Offshore wind is a startup business for them. It's a new venture. The Cobalt project is the first offshore wind project that this company has ever built. Rank amateurs commit mistakes, and sometimes they're colossal mistakes. So I just wanted to say that the other thing that's important to know is each of these projects is housed and configured inside of a limited liability company, Park City Wind LLC. What does that mean? If something goes wrong, the parent company, Avangrid Inc., they can walk away. And somebody, but not them, is going to have to pay the cleanup costs.
I call them our corporate slaughter.
Right.
That's what they are.
Rick Brightson, did you have a question?
I just want to say that, I first made a kid, in 1960, I bought my first home here in 1974. And it's been here ever since. I didn't know it was a band. Until she came and spoke in the over years
Yeah.
more ago.
Yeah.
And I said to someone next to me, I don't know who this person is, but she really knows what she's talking about. And then I met her, and now I'm a supporter of her campaign, a supporter of Kelly P, Hector, of Stacy, and you've actually done a fantastic job. The gentleman is in the green shirt here, who's made a statement about what's being done here, how we can handle this. One of the things that you need to do is form a pact, non-partisan pact. Two, support people who run the office, even though they're not in our district. But we support them pro one here.
That's a great idea, Rick.
But we should find people who will represent the interests that they thought. That's it. Fantastic. So I'm happy to have a non-partisan pact. And the other thing is, you mentioned the legal.
Yeah.
Actually trying to enforce the legal effort, suffer, so don't get all mixed up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Start a legal fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all this poor guy who was killed in the Trump rally the other day. As of this morning, they were $6.9 million on a gold.
Wow.
Help people who were
We are on GoFundMe, but it's been moribund until recently. When I sent out the two appeals saying, okay, we're moving in the legal realm, we started getting donations in, and it's starting to be possible for us to do what we haven't been able to do before, but we need a lot more. It's, we were told to fight the EFF.
What you're doing,
Yeah,
the information that you compile,
Yeah.
share with us, is informing us of what's gonna happen, what's happening to us in that year.
Yeah.
Maybe we can break it down into bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
So that-
I know it's a lot, Rick.
Okay, thank you.
One more.
Okay, Tony.
Barnstable on the beach at the end of Gale Avenue.
I don't believe, is it, I don't believe so.
That actually seems to be the Rihanna couple. That was the pier, right out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that got wiped out and someone went in the earth.
Maybe it is owned by the town still, but it's not by Article 97. No, just because the town owns land doesn't mean it's covered by Article 97. Bill Cutcliffe has an answer, and then Kenny.
If you could stop them going to Dowses, we still have all that dangerous cable coming up.
They want to, Tony. They've actually planned to go up Riano anyway. We need to get them to leave our town. Yes. We need to get them out of our town. Go ahead, Bill. The Cape. I can see people are leaving, but Bill, what's up?
Each property owner that is the water, all the property.
Down to the rack line. Yeah. I think what Tony was talking about is where that little fence is, where you can drive up and sit at the ocean at the end of Riano. That must be town land. Yeah, oh, it does. Okay. Kenny wanted to say one thing real quick, and then I think we're gonna call it a day because folks are going home to dinner.
I was a meeting last fall at the Settlement Library, there's a handful of people there, and Stacy was there. I'm not sure about Hannah, but I'm checking again. Yeah, and I asked the snake oil salesman from Iowa,
Arvin Bridge.
excuse me. They're saying, yeah, and one thing to go to the facility, go to the benefits or river, which is Dusty. His response was, you don't have that contract to go with. So these workers said, well, keep this contract to go to our town that our interest. And if they don't, they lose the contract for a vendor. And the other, there's another company that has it. So why can't they go over there? Because, there's only about 30% of the meeting, 14 people. It's kind of displayed where they're coming from. They want to their contract, and make money on it.
Ryan Colville wants to say something real quick.
Promise. I've been involved here early on. You're right, there's a lot of information. There are implications everywhere you look. But from this meeting, it was so delightful to get a young lady, black shirt, on there saying, start to pull together and realize we in Barnstable have everything to lose and nothing.
Yeah.
And we're being told, shut up and take it. We can have it.
So this fellow here, go ahead, sir.
What's about the Tuesday night meeting, because I came away, and starting to speak, and thank you at the health board.
Yeah, Board of Health.
I came away thinking they kind of blew us off. You just said that you have a chance to address them and bring them verbiage. What they said was, bring us verbiage, and I thought, oh boy, they want us to submit like 1,000 pages that they can vote on. And I think I'm gonna go to the meeting. Will any of us be allowed to speak?
No, they're very strict about their agenda. I was hoping with Dr. Conley, he was ready to go, he had his speech all set, but nope, it's Suzanne, because, it's one person. What we're going to do Tuesday is give them exactly, the city ordinances, you study the ordinances, these are the ones we want you to enforce. These are the ones we want you to enforce, and here are the state regulations you are required as part of your responsibility to the people of this town to enforce. And so we will lay that out, and then we are expecting them to come back at us. They are either going to say, no, we can't, or, okay, we'll undertake the study of the cumulative health and safety effects of all three of these projects, because I keep thinking about that restricted income housing development over there in Hyannis. What did they ever do to deserve living next to this massive substation that we weren't even paying attention, and we should have been, but we didn't. So we're gonna force this on the Board of Health. It's not just Dowses, Craigville, and Coles Beach. It's the cumulative effects for all three projects, including the one that's already energized. Wherever the cable is, wherever this infrastructure is, we want them to study it, and we'll be pushing them. Yeah.
Environmental.
Yeah.
Lung cancer, leukemia, multiple myeloma, that's all environmental. That's what's coming on with this.
Yeah.
So I know we talk about the whale, we talk about the beach. Think about every family member and friend that you got buried with cancer because they were affected somehow through the environment.
Well, Dr. Conway, you guys, I told you about my YouTube channel. Look at the presentation by Dr. Peters and Dr. Conway. They both spoke very eloquently about the health impacts and the dangers related to all this EMF. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Make sure to look at those videos.
If there is anybody here